You are experiencing the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.
It is December 17th, 2025, and welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty, where we are bringing you the people, organizations, and the issues affecting your liberty around the world and in your region. And today we're going to talk about the troubling war drums that we're hearing around Venezuela right now with our country. So we'll definitely get into that and some of the issues around that. And then we're going to get into the issue that we missed last week on all the forbidden words, almost as if we, by some kind of karma, we were sort of forbidden from saying them last week. Well, we're going to get to them this week on the second half of the show. And finally, in our Knucklehead Noise Patrol, we're going to talk a little bit about Trump's comments on Rob Reiner's death. But before we get into any of that, let me introduce you to our panel today. It is, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. And I'll be your host, and my name is Jason McPhee. So we always start out the show with a Liberty quote, and we still wanted to have one related to speech because last week we thought we were going to get to that, and so we're going to bring that one back, but we're also got another quote too. So let's start with the quote we were going to use from last week first, and this is our Mr. Ben Franklin here, and he said a quote that I think is really important, and it's, whoever would overthrow the liberty of a nation must begin by subduing the freeness of speech. And I think you can see the importance of, with this quote, of how important they thought speech was. And that's why that was the First Amendment to our Bill of Rights. It was so important in us establishing our Constitution. And of course, since we're going to talk about a lot during the show, later in the show, I'm going to refresh you real quick. It's really short, but Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And of course, the main part I think that's worth pointing to here is, for the purposes of our show today, is this freedom of speech and freedom of the press. So that's all important. And now I want to bring you the other quote that we're going to use today too. And this is sort of a quote of a bad guy and their thoughts of speech. So this one is Saul Alinsky. And so if you listen to sort of a lot of maybe sort of on the right podcasts or whatever, you certainly heard his name before, because anybody who complains about Obama or anybody else, they bring him up because he was an influence to Obama. He was a community organizer, and he is often cited for having some influence over some of the ideas that Obama and I think Hillary Clinton had in his book, in his book, The Rules for Radicals. And he had this observation that I think is a super powerful observation. And he said, he who controls the language controls the masses. And again, that's kind of echoing a little bit about what Benjamin Franklin said here. If you're going to try and subdue a people's liberty, you got to go after the speech. So what do you think about all this, Leon?
This whole thing about limiting speech and subduing speech, it really started to take serious legs in the 1980s with political correctness on the campuses, when there are certain words that you cannot say. I mean, it is so obvious, what Ben Franklin is saying, that the first thing that you have to go after when you're trying to destroy the liberty, and if you could destroy the liberties of people, you could destroy the liberties within your society and thus destroy the society. It is so true that language must be the thing that you must alter. I mean, and you see so much of it going on in our speech today, and it's coming in fast and furious from the left. I'm sure there are examples from the right, but it's coming like crazy from the left. I mean, like, I hate when people say, "Oh, a woman should have the right to choose," or we must have reproductive health. I mean, these things are such god awful distortions of speech. In the reproductive health case, you're talking about a dead baby at the end of that. But the whole idea is it is not to really properly express what is going on. It is to really and truly to manipulate us with the voting public into thinking or seeing this right to kill an unborn child in a more charitable way. And I don't know how you can do that, but that is what the word changes are all about. And you talk about about that whole thing about right to choose have so much engulfed our politics since 1973 when Roe versus Wade was decided by the Supreme Court. When the right to have an abortion became a constitutional right. God knows, I don't know how that happened, but it did happen. And then you see it in other areas of our lives when you hear like the Inflation Reduction Act, which had nothing to do with inflation reduction. This was in the Biden administration and had absolutely nothing to do with inflation reduction. But it had to do with every boondoggle that Biden and his cohorts could. Well, and maybe I may have to forgive Biden here because he wasn't really the president; he was just a figurehead. But whatever his cohorts could come up with and stuff into that Inflation Reduction Act, supposedly, okay, which had nothing to do with inflation reduction. There's all kind of things about climate change in there and all sort of damn nonsense. But the whole idea is out of all of this is that we have to go after speech. If they want to destroy us and destroy this country, they must go after speech. No matter where it is. Look at right now. One of the things is that if you want to shut down a conversation with somebody, you just accuse them of being a racist, and the conversation is over. Well, anti-Semitism now is the thing. Some of it is legitimate, the accusations of anti-Semitism. A lot of it is just a shut down speech and discussion about maybe policies in Israel and that kind of stuff. Anti-Semitism is there. We also have this whole thing about Islamophobia. If you criticize anything in the body of Islam, all of a sudden you're Islamophobic. And these are the kind of things that go on. This transphobic now is the same thing now. If you criticize the transgender ideology, you're obviously you're transphobic. And but the whole idea is they're attacking speech, which is the first line of defense that they must break down before they subdue us as a nation. We better be very careful here, and we very mark those words of Benjamin Franklin. We have to mark those words and keep it at the forefront of our mind if this nation is to survive.
Well, it's funny too because you constantly see this slipping of the language. Like, I think when Martin Luther King was marching and his "I Have a Dream" speech and all that, it seemed to me the call back then. And granted, I would just been a little kid. In fact, I might have even been born during some of that stuff. But it seemed to me that from what I recall from reading and watching things from that era is that the call was for equality. And of course, now they have slipped in the word equity and they've replaced everything in equality. And a lot of people who aren't very discerning, they just simply go along and then they just go along with the new chant for equity, not really realizing that this is not quite the same thing as calling for equality. It is calling for kind of getting to the finish line and then reshuffling everything.
Reshuffling the deck. Yes. But Jason, we should really say on that very point, we should take a step back. Yes, when Martin Luther King was marching and doing all the whole civil rights movement was about finding equality. But a little time after that, after King's assassination, I think King was assassinated in 1968, if I'm not mistaken. What came to the forefront was this so-called equal opportunity. And equal opportunity did not mean what we think, what normal people will think it means. Equal opportunity it means that you have to have, everybody must have the opportunity, and everybody must have, and I have no problem with that, everybody having an opportunity. I have no problem with that. But it's the equal outcomes that they were seeking in this equal opportunity agenda that they had. Because even there are some There are some government agencies that we call Equal Opportunity Commission or some kind of stuff, some kind of thing like that. But those commissions were just there to design to make sure they were being conquered actually, to make sure the right number of blacks, Hispanics, and not right number of women all represented all over the place and that kind of stuff. And I don't even understand this damn nonsense about represented as if we are not all Americans. This is such crap. But equal opportunity, first, before we even got to this whole thing about the DEI, it was equal opportunity really you could call it the first DEI, I guess.
It was equal opportunity, but then it became quotas, racial quotas, and then racial quotas got a dirty word, became a dirty word. So then they called it affirmative action.
Yes.
I just, and then if anybody looked too close at that, then they decided, oh, well, okay, we're going to call it equity now. So don't worry, we're just, we won't do that anymore because we know nobody likes that. And then they just do it in the form of another phrase.
Yes. But that's just the point, look at every single time we get caught up to them, caught up in their little schemes. What do? They change the word, they change the language. That is what they always do, all trying to manipulate us. Oh, we have to be good people. We have to believe in their definition of equity. We have to believe in their definition of DEI and all this other damn nonsense. It's just changing the words so that they can manipulate us so that we'll vote with our emotions rather than with our head and facts.
Yeah, it's just kind of a form of modern day sophistry where they just throw a bunch of jargon at you. Hopefully, they kind of hope you'll get confused, and then you'll just agree with them eventually after getting worn down. And I think it usually works until people start to get fed up with once they start realizing that, hey, this new definition doesn't work either.
That's working. Yes. And this nonsense even goes on in I spent a lot of my career in energy, and they have all kind of new things about green energy. What the hell is green energy? Energy is energy, but they want to call it something nice to manipulate us. Green energy. Oh, we need green energy. We need a lot of green energy. What the hell is that? Okay. And the other one they like to use is renewables. We must have renewable energy, which is with the whole word, the whole way they use that thing is just a bunch of damn nonsense. There's no such thing as renewable energy. But
more to the point is that they used to call the climate change. They used to call it global warming.
Global warming, exactly.
The name to climate change.
Climate change. Yes.
As a matter
of fact, there's a well-known law here in California, and it is called the Global Warming Solution Act. Is ABM? I don't remember AB what. But that law now is now being touted as that's how we're gonna solve the climate change problem. But the actual name is the Global Warming Solution Act, I believe is what it is. But again, they have to change the name to manipulate people. Climate change. Oh God, we have to be so concerned about climate change. But that whole narrative is now falling apart. So I'm waiting to see what is your next agenda now.
Yeah. Well, we're going to dive into this a little later in the show, even though we spent quite a bit of time talking about it already. But I think a little bit more concerning than the manipulation of the words is, I guess, that we might be getting potentially manipulated into getting into a war right now with Venezuela. In case you blinked, in the last 3 or 4 months, the tensions have been running high with Venezuela, where there's been issues of us blowing up boats coming out of Venezuela and accusing them of sending drugs here and everything else. Well, we have a little video to kind of bring you up to speed. So let's watch this just so we can all get on the same page.
American forces, the world's most advanced military, massing near Venezuela, now with a new mission. On Tuesday night, the U.S. president stated he is ordering a total and complete blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers going into and out of Venezuela. Donald Trump said it's because the Maduro regime is using oil from these stolen oil fields to finance, among other things, drug terrorism, human trafficking, and murder. It's not clear what he means by stolen, possibly referring to U.S. companies Venezuela nationalized decades ago and which Maduro's predecessor increased control over.
Of course, Trump is referring to Hugo Chavez nationalizing all of the oil companies, essentially stealing the companies and their profits to pay for his socialist policies. As you'll remember, we've talked about this on the show before. Venezuela was pushing massive socialist policies, kind of similar to what Mamdani talks about in New York. Free buses, free subsidized energy, subsidized food, all kinds of things. And of course, now it's an absolute disaster. But that's a little bit of an aside. Let's get back to the actual story here.
We're formally classifying fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction.
Donald Trump says the actions against Venezuela are punishment for drug smuggling.
Only about 5 to 8% of the cocaine in the U.S. comes from Venezuela, and Venezuela produces no fentanyl.
Chris Sabatini from the Chatham House think tank says it's a strategy to push Maduro out of power.
This is really trying an attempt to engage in regime change, as I like to say, on the cheap.
Sabatini and Magos believe the cause is American domestic politics.
And of course, all of this is on top of the U.S. military strikes on Venezuelan drug boats, I guess alleged Venezuelan drug boats, because we don't really have anything left for there to be a collection of evidence, I guess, of after the fact. It was kind of emphasized by the recent double tap that they did on one where there were a couple survivors and they struck the boat again to make sure everybody was dead. We'll probably get into that at the end of the piece.
Since early September, President Donald Trump has ordered a series of controversial military strikes on boats in the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific. The administration says the vessels were smuggling drugs from Venezuela and from Colombia. But officials in both countries, and many in Washington, are questioning whether that's true.
And so there you have it. We are potentially on the verge of war, and there's supposed to be an address to the country, I believe, tonight. I saw he was, I think, maybe it might have already happened.
It's already over. There was an address. It's already over. Yes.
Do you know? Did Trump say that anything about the Venezuela situation, or was this about the economy that he was talking about in that?
No, he spoke about the Venezuela situation, but I didn't get into details because I was getting ready for the show.
Oh. Yeah, so was I. So there you go. But this is something that has been ramping up, and let me share screen again. But again, here's some of the different story angles that people are talking about, and of course, some of this has to do with oil and blockading it. But one of the big issues to me is aside from what the rationale is necessarily for us getting in here and policing this, but Leanne, it's the idea that we're blowing up these boats in international waters, and it's not clear that we're really in a war. I mean, these boats are supposedly I tend to believe they probably are filled with drugs, but even then, does that really make sense that we're just blowing these boats up out in the ocean without, I don't know, maybe clear evidence? And not to mention the double tap too. I mean, I guess we can get into that in a moment, but what are your initial thoughts on this whole thing?
Well, my initial thoughts is this set a very bad precedent. Okay. I mean, sure, drug smuggling is a very bad problem for us here in the U.S. There's a big whole argument about whether drugs should be decriminalized and all that. I'm fully open to that discussion. But as it is right now, drug smuggling is a serious problem. But Trump's actions is really setting a very, very, very bad precedent, because what if China decide to blow up whatever that they think is being smuggled? What if Russia decides to blow up whatever they think is being smuggled, or for whatever reason they find some justifications on international waters to start blowing things up? It's a very, very bad precedent. It really is. Even though I could somewhat sympathize with Trump trying to stop the flow of drugs into the United States, I could somewhat sympathize with that. But you're setting a very bad precedent by doing this. And on top of that, really and truly, if you wanted to do this, I would have no problem with this if you would interdict, stop the boats and arrest the people and bring them here and try them or something, you know. But just blowing them off out of the water is a very very bad precedent that we are setting, and we are supposed to be, you know, one of the moral world leaders, you know, and all that, you know, and this is how we want to police our drug problem. It's kind of difficult. It's kind of difficult to find a good justification for that action. It really is.
Yeah, it seems like, you know, the deeper we go into the war on drugs, the the more trouble we get ourselves into. Almost, I mean, it seems to be without fail. But you know, I did want to address this issue of this double tap thing because, you know, let's say that we, you know, gave Trump the green light and said that, okay, Venezuela is a hostile entity. And so it was maybe okay then to blow up a boat coming out of Venezuela because we thought it was a threat. But once the boat has been blasted and it's
totally disabled, yes,
yeah, and you got people in the water, the idea of a double tap, you know, this idea, and by the way, double taps. This is not a completely foreign idea. This is not like something that hasn't happened with our military before. Let me bring up this article here. We've talked about Julian Assange before, and Julian Assange made us all aware that our government regularly did this in the war on terror when we would maybe identify a terrorist overseas in some of these Islamic countries. And, you know, the best way to get them was with a drone strike. And he showed us that, you know, hey, look, they've got video of this stuff where, you know, after they hit the thing, they will come back and shoot everybody a second time. And of course, in the Julian Assange case, they were actually showing reporters who were getting hit, you know, in a particular case. So clearly the government doesn't always know who they're shooting in all of these cases. They don't have perfect knowledge, but at least there with the double tap, somebody might make the argument that, look, this is in a place where we can't get anybody into to apprehend these people. That's why we're shooting them with drones in some of these countries, like, you know, maybe in Afghanistan or, you know, Iraq or someplace else. But this is in the ocean that we have total military supremacy over out there.
Yes.
And the idea that we have blown up a boat and there's some survivors, it screams to me that, you know, maybe you're just trying to get rid of all the evidence, you know, or get rid of anybody who might have a contrary story here, because I can't figure out why on earth you would want to kill everybody on the boat after you've disabled it when, you know, there might be valuable intel or something else, right? Why on earth are you not, if you think it's that big of a problem, why are you not capturing the people after the threat's been eliminated? That to me seems to be a problem. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree with you on that one. That is seriously problematic. That in terms of how at least that particular strike was handled, when they were clearly, I think two of these smugglers or the alleged smugglers were still alive, and they still did the second blast and end up killing them. Just the optics are really bad, and then there's issues of morality involved in there also. So you cannot defend that. I don't think there's any way you can morally defend that. But you know, I have to mention this. Okay, there's a gross hypocrisy that is ongoing right now. Okay, yes, Trump is doing these strikes in the Caribbean. Yes, they are seriously problematic. I think Rand Paul have made a case that some of this may be necessary, maybe even unconstitutional, and that may be the case. The hypocrisy that is going on here is that during the Obama administration, we had drone strikes. I think he did a total about 500 or something like that. Included in those drone strikes, Obama ended up killing 3 American citizens. And we hardly had a peep. I think Rand Paul might have been the only person who was really objecting to the drone strikes. Everybody else was quiet, and the media was cheering them on. and oh, this is so good. You know, Obama is taking the war to the enemy and blah, 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 and that kind of stuff. And he killed Americans in Yemen.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
well, and just to jump away before you get too far away from that, when Rand Paul, he was questioning this and during the Obama administration, and one of the things that happened too was that an American citizen, I believe, was targeted overseas and killed in one of these drones.
Al-Waki. He was a preacher from San Diego, yes.
And Rand Paul wanted a clarification from the Obama administration, because obviously this is an issue if you're killing American citizens overseas. But, the bigger issue was, are you going to do this over U.S. soil to maybe citizens here? And he literally could not get an answer from the Obama administration. And he had to do like sort of a Mr. Smith goes to Washington filibuster moment on the Senate floor until finally the Obama administration, Eric Holder's
Justice Department,
would finally come out with an answer and say no, they committed. They wouldn't after that, but they wouldn't say that. I mean, that's absolutely insane that they would.
That should be a no-brainer. That should be a no-brainer.
Yeah.
You know, but the thing is, though, Jason, I mean, if you're killing American citizens, I mean, fine. You know, if you want to say you're having a war and you want to eliminate these alleged terrorists and that kind of stuff, which that may be problematic in and of itself. But the killing of American citizens, you're starting down a very slippery slope here. Okay, I mean, when will a president find justification to start killing America? Okay, so so Obama has set the precedent that it's okay to kill American citizens on foreign soil. When are you going to find a president who might find justification to kill an American citizen on U.S. soil? When is that going to happen? We have just started down, since Obama time, this very slippery slope where we could just do these drone strikes or these things, and we could kill this one in international waters, we could kill this one in foreign lands, and all these sort of things. This could be seriously problematic, because once politicians get one of their authorities enhanced, shall we say, they never give it back. They never give it up and say, well, I really shouldn't do that. No, they don't give it back. Obama have now said the president of killing American citizens. Okay, fine. They could justify it. Oh, it was in foreign lands. But when you're going to find a president...
Before we finish that spot, I'm going to have to suppress your speech for a moment to tell you, if you're watching...
Damn, Jason, I thought that's what we're talking about.
Well, if you're going to watch it, if you're watching us on public access, that's all the time we have for you there. But you can watch the rest of the show on knuckleheadsofliberty.com. So go check us out there. We're going to keep talking about this a little bit, a few other issues with Venezuela, and then we're going to get into forbidden words. So go ahead, Leon. Finish up what you needed to say there.
Yes. So the whole issue here that is this slippery slope that we started, the killing of American citizens. When we're going to find a president who might start justifying killing American citizens on U.S. soil, is a slippery slope here. Okay, very, very slippery slope. And this is my fear, that some president down the road might see it. Well, this is some kind of danger to us as American citizens, that we have to set out these drone strikes on these American citizens for these purposes. And this could be seriously, seriously problematic.
Well, and this is quite frankly one of the biggest problems with Trump is that, whether you love him or hate him, the bottom line is he is expanding the powers
of the executive. Yes,
he keeps straining on the constraints of the executive branch. Yes. And the problem is, even if you like what he's doing, if you let him have those powers, you're going to get somebody that you don't like eventually in office, and they could use those powers in a lot of nasty ways. So, I mean, this
Absolutely.
And we saw this during COVID, all of the covert things that government was doing to suppress speech and everything else. I mean, it's something where we have to be eternally vigilant if we want to keep our liberty.
Sure.
But, there's another aspect I wanted to get on before we move off of the Venezuela thing. And the video we showed already touched upon that. But, a bigger, kind of one of the crazier issues is how he recently invoked the idea of WMDs that we haven't really heard a lot about since we needed an excuse to invade Iraq, and it was WMDs that took us down that hole. And in fact, let me just for the heck of it show our debt. And if you look really close at the debt, this is where a lot of that debt really started to spike up, is where we needed that excuse, the WMDs to get us into a war, right? Yeah. Things really start to spike up there. And, it's not just the war in Iraq that caused all that stuff, but certainly that was a big contribution to how we lost so much money. And you see this happening now suddenly, that we are talking about calling drugs WMDs. Anyways, here's a video of Trump talking about it a little more so we can get a little bit of clarification from Trump about what he's talking about here.
But there's no doubt that America's adversaries are trafficking fentanyl into the United States, in part because they want to kill Americans. If this were a war, that would be one of the worst wars. I believe they killed, over the last 5 or 6 years, per year, 200 to 300,000 people. You hear about 100,000, which is a lot of people, but the number is much higher than that.
So this sounds like Trump is getting ready to amp up efforts on the drug war, which you could certainly a lot of skepticism on how well that's worked out for us. I mean, most libertarians, if you ask them, would say, yes, we fought a drug war and drugs won. You can just see the effects all over the country when we've had this drug war going on for since Nixon, I believe. But anyways, let us find out what it is that Trump is going to do now to amp up his efforts in the drug war.
That's why today I'm taking one more step to protect Americans from the scourge of deadly fentanyl flooding into our country. With this historic executive order I will sign today, we're formally classifying fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction, which is what it is. No bomb does what this is doing. 200 to 300,000 people die every year that we know of. So we're formally classifying fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction.
And let me just go back real quick here to our Saul Alinsky quote. He who controls the language controls the masses. And It wasn't until just yesterday that drugs, things you decided to put in your own body were not weapons of mass destruction. They were drugs. Now suddenly these are weapons of mass destruction. And let me give you a few numbers here, because Trump threw out some numbers during that. This is from NIH, and it's comparing different drugs and the deaths they cause. This gray line, in all fairness to Trump, this is the opioids he's talking about, the fentanyl. And this is the illegal stuff. The legal stuff is actually captured in one of these other lines down here. But even here, you see that the NIH, this is around 2023, they're saying it's less than 80,000. And he says, some say it's 100,000, but it's actually 200,000 or 300,000. Right? So, I mean, here we have Trump, again, using sort of questionable numbers. But to be fair, though, I mean, this clearly has become a problem in recent years above all the other drugs. But if we're just going to start classifying things as weapons of mass destruction, well, if you look at alcohol, our CDC says that alcohol kills almost 200,000 people a year. Is alcohol now a weapon of mass destruction, right? In this country, right? And even that, I mean, car deaths. It's around. Let's see, the green line says that's the number of deaths in the population from 1913 to 2023. And at its peak, cars were killing around 50,000 people a year. People were dying in automotive deaths. Are those now weapons of mass destruction? Right? I mean, this is a bastardization of the language. Anyway, what do you think about this issue, Leon, of this slip of the language to maybe ease us into a war?
Well, this is just the point of our whole discussion. They trying to manipulate us into thinking things that we wouldn't otherwise think. I mean, okay, these opioids, fentanyl, they are bad drugs. Sure, they're doing a lot of damage in the country, and to young people in particular. But a WMD, come on, This is beyond ridiculous, and this is the thing about Donald Trump that I really can't stand. He 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 always finds something to exaggerate if he's doing a if the economy is just limping along. Oh, we're doing a great job. The economy is fine. Blah blah blah, this kind of stuff. If he's talking about something bad, like these so-called weapon of mass destruction, or oh, it's 100,000. They say it's 100,000, but we know it's a lot higher. Where the hell are they getting the numbers from? Please tell us. So, the dangers in all of these things is that we start using these words like weapons of mass destruction. People start thinking about WMDs in the same light as we thought about them when we invaded Iraq. And next thing you know, we are invading. If you get on that slippery slope, next thing you know, we invading Venezuela. We invading Venezuela to stop the weapons of mass destruction, which is nothing but drugs. Street drugs is what he's talking about. This is the use of language to subdue us and manipulate us, and this is a potential problem.
Yeah. Well, apparently, I mean, if you believe this, then George Floyd, I guess it was legit to if police killed him. He had a weapon of mass destruction, right?
Yeah.
He swallowed a weapon of mass destruction. Right? So I'm surprised that the police were that gentle.
Yeah, really, seriously, yeah. Yes. Well, that would justify George Floyd's death, really, actually, because Derek Chauvin, or whatever the hell his name was trying to save us all by whether it was accidental or intentional. He was trying to save us all. That's why he killed him. So
Yeah, Derek Chauvin has a new defense.
There we go. That's exactly right. You have a new defense. Yes.
I don't want to relitigate that whole thing, but I do think Chauvin kind of got railroaded. but
I first, honestly, at first I did think it was intentional murder, but after I look at the evidence and look at some of the things that have come out since, yeah, I think you might be right on that one. Honestly, you might be right.
No, I was right there with you. It's like, how could you justify, what was it, like 6 minutes or 8 minutes or whatever?
Almost 9 minutes, actually, almost 9 minutes.
Yeah, but then if you actually go back and you look at all the video, which almost nobody did, they just gave us the highlight, and
yeah,
and then the fact that the government lied about a lot of the evidence in court,
yes,
absolutely nuts. But anyways, that's a government lie for another day for us to try to get into. But yeah, they just the fentanyl tie-in. That's the only reason why I invoke that. I mean, you could see how the absurdity, if we say that fentanyl is a weapon of mass destruction, the massive power that gives government within our borders to just break down doors looking for weapons.
Yes. It's like the Patriot Act, the Patriot Act. People are saying well, I think that was during the Bush administration, the second Bush administration. They had the Patriot Act. So now that should sound like something very nice and patriotic, something nice and wonderful. But the truth of the fact of the matter is the Patriot Act took away a lot of our liberties, especially in terms of like the Fourth Amendment, where they eased up on the requirements for some cases for search warrants and all these sort of things. I mean, it was kind of the nice sounding name was nothing but to manipulate us, because at the point in time after the 9/11 attacks, I mean, everybody was united, and we have to go after these terrorists. We have to look for them wherever they are, blah blah blah, and all this kind of stuff and things like that. And in the process of that, in the process of trying to find good security, we gave up our good liberties in that Patriot Act and in other pieces of legislation. That is a potential problem. This is the dangers of the politician trying to be the gatekeepers of our words and some of our actions too. They're trying to be the gatekeepers because, and you just raised the COVID. if the COVID doesn't convince us of what the government can do, then nothing will. Yeah. And if nothing will, then our society is lost.
Yeah, remember how ivermectin, that is a drug that people legitimately take for a lot of things, and suddenly it became horse paste and horse dewormer.
Yes,
according to CNN. Right? We watched them try to redefine that on the fly during.
Yes, and hydroxychloroquine have been used off label for so many years.
And then it became fish tank cleaner.
Fish tank cleaner, they become a problem. Oh my God. We cannot do that. And doctors who prescribe it, we have to take away their license, maybe. This is madness.
Yeah. Well, anyways, this bastardization of language, it takes us to a topic that we have missed the last couple of weeks. So we're finally going to get into it. And if you have kids watching, you may want to, kind of push them away, because we are going to say some words that may be offensive to some people. And so as we discuss this, because you can't discuss words without saying the word.
Exactly.
This is the issue, right? And that we've been cowed into not being able to say the words. So, and I say, we're not trying to offend anybody. We're trying to analyze what's happening to our society. So, anyways, let's get into that. And we're going to start with, we're going to talk about offensive gestures that are forbidden, and then we're going to talk about words that have become forbidden, and we're going to talk then about even thoughts that are becoming forbidden, which is just, that's where it all goes to eventually, right?
Yeah, eventually, yes.
But let's start, I guess. There was a story of a school here in California. Well, actually, you know what? Let's start with, there was a issue with this, a military academy, I guess, first. And there was a gesture that people found offensive. And they decided it was a racist gesture. And it was actually what we all know as the okay sign. So hopefully nobody's saying I'm making a racist gesture right here, because I am not intending to. Right? But somebody may just turn around and say I did, right? Well, we have a video of a story that happened. Watch that, because I think this will help everybody to understand what the problems are with trying to ban gestures, because you think you know what somebody means by the way they move their hands or body or whatever. So here we go.
Well, tonight the U.S. Navy is investigating whether several cadets flashed a racist hand gesture on national television. The incident in question happened during a broadcast on ESPN before the Army-Navy football game. KCAL 9's Brittany Hopper is live in the newsroom with a look for us. Brittany.
It was an annual college football game, but many people on social media couldn't help but notice this. A few cadets throwing up this hand gesture during live TV. It looks like the OK symbol. However, Professor Brian Levin with the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism says the message originally started as a hoax, but has since been adopted by white supremacists and is now known as the white power symbol.
White power symbol? Well, that sounds pretty serious. Let's see what the experts have to say.
Bottom line, this was like a terrible hoax that started on 4chan a couple of years ago. It then became kind of viral within the white supremacist community. So like many things, we see dual symbols. For instance, marching hammers started out in a Pink Floyd album, and then it became the marching hammers of skinheads. So, and I've testified in court trials on this. You'll sometimes see appropriations of minor symbols by white supremacists and neo-Nazis. All the major monitoring groups, the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism, the Anti-Defamation League, the Southern Poverty Law Center, folks in law enforcement, I'm former NYPD. We all know what it is.
The Naval Academy is conducting an investigation into the incident that has many people wondering how this could happen in the hands of our young military cadets.
So the expert said, you heard him, we all know what it is. We all know what this, I guess, in some weird orientation, I don't know. But they said, we all know what it means. Well, thank goodness there was an investigation, because a week later, let's see what they found.
An upside-down OK sign flashed behind an announcer last Saturday during the Army-Navy game goes viral. And soon after, speculation it was a white power sign.
He is in. Touchdown, Army.
But now, almost a week after West Point cadets and Naval Academy midshipmen were caught on camera, both the Army and Navy say the students were instead playing what's called the circle game.
What's that?
Yeah, what is the circle game?
Oh,
That means players flash an upside-down OK sign below the waist, and anyone who looks at it is punched.
You looked. Ow!
The TV show Malcolm in the Middle featured the circle game back in 2000.
Ow!
And it's been around for decades. But the Anti-Defamation League says the upside-down OK has more recently been used as a symbol of white supremacy.
So you mean the expert was wrong? You mean an ambiguous symbol could have a whole lot of meanings, and we shouldn't just say, hey, we in law enforcement know what this means, which is exactly what that guy said.
The U.S. Naval Academy said it not only reviewed the footage, but conducted more than 24 interviews and involved the FBI. The Navy also determined the students' hand gestures were not intended to be racist in any way.
So there you go. I mean, they were literally ready to throw the book at these people because they knew what they were thinking.
They knew what, yes. They knew the intent. They knew the intent. And this is our tax dollars they spent to investigate this damn nonsense. Okay, you never notice that every time we hear about some symbol or some kind of stuff, it's always have to do with white supremacy and white power. It was always that, black people don't have signs and symbols that anybody who's offensive, I guess. Hispanic people, neither. They don't have signs and symbols that are offensive to anybody. It's only white people and their white supremacy and their white power. That's the only thing that we find offensive. Nothing else is offensive. This is the insanity of all of this. Besides, even if it meant something to do with white power or white supremacy, even if it did, so what? So what? What I mean, what are you punish? You punishing somebody's thoughts? So what? I mean, this is insane.
Yeah, but even I mean, that's the main issue, right? I mean, we should have the freedom to say things like that. Let's go back to that First Amendment again. It says, shall make no laws abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. It doesn't say unless it's hate speech, unless it's naughty ideas. Right? There's no clause here that says any of that, right? It just says no law and then abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. And here, we have the government nannies, all these people who know what's best for you and who can tell you that they know what you're thinking. Yeah. They'll tell you when you have bad thoughts and need some correcting, I guess.
Need some correction. But there might be a caveat here on this particular story. The rules within the military might be slightly different for the average citizen, say like me and you, because they have the U.S. Code of Military Justice, and one of the things I'm sure they cannot do is to do anything that is unbecoming of an officer or blah 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 or whatever and that kind of stuff. And I think speech is within the boundaries of the commander-in-chief to limit under some circumstances, because if you think about it, and you could see why it may be necessary for them to be able to limit speech. For instance, could a military officer standing on U.S. soil call an enemy and tell the enemy, well, we coming to attack, and then he can claim, well, free speech, it should be protected speech. That would not be protected speech. So there might be conditions under which the military could limit speech.
And to be fair, I mean, you're entering into we're not under a military draft anymore, so you are voluntarily entering into that contract with the government to say that you're okay with your speech being abridged to be part of the military, and you kind of do that even when you join into any employment, right? I mean, you don't get to get hired by McDonald's and then get to lecture everybody at the cash register about your religion or
start trashing McDonald's food, right? Okay, you working for McDonald's, you start trashing the food. That you can't say that's free speech and then I should keep on working here. You cannot say that. No. Yeah. So,
it's mainly about the government, and in that case, the employer with the military is the government.
Is the government? Yes. Yes.
So that's why it's a little
that was the point I was trying to make. That
and by the way, in that particular case, the investigators did say though that these guys would still be disciplined a little bit because this was still behavior that was not considered appropriate.
Yeah. I think they say behavior that was unbecoming is what I think they said, something like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but like I said, this is, they were literally though the big issue is that we had these speech police who were, running around trying to say that they knew that the intent of what these guys were saying, and that's what we really got to worry about.
Exactly.
Now, but now there's another story here though that I wanted to get to, and this one is also about a symbol. And it's a little more straightforward. It probably does have a hate context, but it gets back to that point that Leon was talking about again, that, well, do we even have the right to have hateful speech or whatever? And in this case, there was a school, I guess, where a group of students formed a human swastika. So we have a little bit of a video on that. So let's watch that and then we can talk about it.
A human swastika on a high school football field. Tonight, an investigation into a social media post that's outraged parents, students, and the San Jose Jewish community. A group of students formed a swastika on the football field and then Instagrammed it.
This picture is circulating on social media. It appears to show a group of students laying on the football field at Branham High School forming a swastika. One user on social media posted it along with an anti-Semitic message. Branham High School's principal sent families a message this week saying, in part, quote, "The incident is being investigated in accordance with district procedures and appropriate follow-up will occur. We want to be clear. Branham stands firmly against all forms of hate, discrimination, and intolerance."
And so there you have it. And here we see a picture of what they were doing. And they I guess there was a quote where they had actually, I think, quoted Hitler or something. Along some lines. So it's very likely that this was, I think that we could bring back that investigator now and he'll be really happy because he can tell us and he knows exactly what they were doing. But still, this kind of brings up a few issues. I mean, I think that, if a group of students wants to walk down the street in the shape of a swastika, is that their right on the sidewalk to do that? I mean, yeah, kind of. I mean, why couldn't they? But this is actually on school grounds, which maybe there's some rules about the property because it is government property, and therefore, who has the right to decide what we do on government property? I don't know, but there seems to be a few issues. What are your thoughts on this, Leon?
Well, I believe there's a Supreme Court case about free speech on public campuses, high school and public universities, that where and well, in the case I think it was in a high school, and I think administrators in public high schools do have a right to limit speech in some under some circumstances. I have a problem. I have a problem with that because really and truly that's the government limiting speech, sometimes unduly. But you are left with this to be in this kind of limbo where you're not sure how you can fall on this particular issue. Now, I think people laying down on a school property and forming a swastika, you could probably say it's immoral. Okay, maybe it's immoral, but is it protected speech? I think it should be. It should be protected speech. I don't like it. I think it's disgusting. But the First Amendment was not made. I said this before. The First Amendment was not made for when we're nice having happy speech, nice, wonderful speech. 1 and 1 is 2. Oh, Jason, oh, it's so nice and wonderful. We are such nice, diverse people, and all that kind of bullshit. The First Amendment wasn't made for that. The First Amendment was made to protect even the most disgusting speech. That's what the First Amendment was for, to protect us even when we speak and people find it offensive. Now, we can't go about, even shouting fire in a crowded theater. It is okay to do that. But as the consequences is which you can punish. So if you caught fire in a crowded theater and there was no fire and people run out, somebody died in the process and that kind of stuff, they could prosecute you for the action after the fact. Your speech will still be, I guess, protected in a sense, but as your consequences, the consequences of that speech will not be. So this particular case, I am not sure where I would fall, because I'm certain that there's a Supreme Court case about high schools public schools in general, where I think administrators are permitted to limit speech under some circumstances. So,
well, and remember, we've seen cases where maybe a coach sits down to pray with students after a game on the field, and that's almost like, especially if it's silent prayer, that's kind of thought policing at that point, I guess.
Exactly.
But it does seem to me, though, that the real problem in these cases is not that, people have speech that they would like to express one way or the other. It's that it's the government school, right? Because if it's a government school, then, we all have some stake in it, and therefore who gets to decide, right? And this is why one of the big issues about privatizing schools and having school choice, because then if you don't like the speech that's allowed on some schools, you just go to a different school, right? I mean, it's
absolutely.
And so, if a coach wants to pray with his students, and if everybody in that community likes that, why should that be forbidden? And on the other hand, why should somebody get to force that on everybody if everybody in the community doesn't want that, right? So either way, it's all about freedom of association, and we seem to miss that all the time by just loving our government monopoly on schools to death.
You see, and this is the danger. The danger that we face here is when the government become the arbiter of speech. We don't want that. We definitely don't want that. And I hate to bring up the COVID again, but it was such a important case where the government was actually took upon itself to limit the speech of certain people, mostly doctors, other professionals, because they didn't like the speech. And it's not their job to not like our speech. We are the citizens. We are protected by our First Amendment of our U.S. Constitution. But the government was telling us what we can and cannot say. Even YouTube and some of these places, well, they were private organizations. They could limit our speech on their platform. I guess, even though I find that I think that should be wrong, but I mean, it's not unconstitutional. But this whole thing about when the government become the arbiter, this is the danger. Okay. And even in that case, you just said there, Jason, you're right, it's a public school. So if the government is limiting speech on a public school, you're talking about the government becoming the arbiter of speech, which sets a dangerous precedent along the way.
And keep in mind, as Leon was saying, with respect to COVID, remember a high government official, Andrew Fauci, he said to everybody, Anthony Fauci. Well, that's a good sign that I'm already starting to forget his name. All the damage that guy did. That's a sign of healing, I guess. But anyways, Dr. Anthony Fauci, he told everybody, in order to shut people up, I am the science. I speak for science, which is a way to say, sit down and shut up. Right?
Exactly.
Government telling you, well, he is not the science, right? That's not, anybody who really has studied and understand anything about the history of science understands this is a history of the evolution of objective thought of humanity. And that means that we're allowed to question, not that you're not allowed to question. That's literally what we're getting away from in science.
Yes.
So but under government, it always goes back to sit down and shut up.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Well, now the next area that we want to touch into is words, and that's going to be the trickiest area here. And to give you an example, let's jump into there are certain words that are forbidden, and we're gonna address those in just a second. But let's watch a video to help understand what the stakes are in this, of what can happen to people when the government or people decide that they're just words that they just can't hear because and we just need to bring down some kind of government control on them. So here is a video of a person fired for using a certain word.
According to state documents, a former DMPS staff member was asked to resign or be fired after repeating a racial slur that a student said. Local 5's Emma Sterner joins us now in studio. And Emma, what details can you share with us?
Following is detailed by Iowa Judge Patrick Thomas. On May 15th, Esslinger was supervising a study hall when she saw a student calling another student a racial slur. This led her to take the student to the Student Services Center to see a discipline coordinator. And at the center, the student continued saying the word. Esslinger was trying to get the coordinator's attention but failed, so she decided to tell them, quote, "He's saying blank," with that blank being the slur.
So you may wonder what's the harm in many of these cases of this word policing by government agencies and other such things that happen. We certainly see it happening in other countries as well. Well, this particular story, a person is trying to discipline a kid and they are literally repeating what the kid said to the other people in authority in order to convey what has happened. And they're literally getting persecuted for that. I mean, this is nuts. It's not like the woman went out of her way just to say these words on her own. She is literally trying to convey the information of the inappropriate behavior, which is absolutely nuts. And we've seen this happen over and over again in schools and other places as well. Let's hear what happened to this woman and the rest of the story.
The student was then taken by the coordinator. Later on the 15th, the district met with Esslinger and asked her to write a statement about what happened earlier. In that statement, she says she was not calling anyone that slur and apologized for saying it. She says she was just trying to alert the discipline coordinator. The district decided after that meeting to place Esslinger on administrative leave, pending an investigation. The next day, on May 16th, Esslinger called the district's HR manager to ask about the investigation. The manager later told Esslinger she had to make a choice, either resign or be terminated.
So there you have it. I mean, that's the stakes, that people are losing their jobs. And this is the case of government here, because this is a school district, a government school again, right?
Yes.
So what are your thoughts on this, Leon, before we take a deeper dive?
I just, Jason, I really, hate the hypocrisy involved in all of these things, okay? Yeah, I used to travel on the train to go to work when I was working. I've been retired over 6 years now, and on the South Line goes through South Sacramento, and every morning or every evening when I'm coming home, you'll hear people on the train, usually young black men, using "my nigga this," "my nigga that," or "that nigga did this," or "that nigga did that," constantly on the train. Now, I would imagine that if a white person was doing that, had that exact statement, exact behavior on the train, we would have had people up in arms. They would have wanted to probably ban the person from the train if they cannot modify their speech. And here we go again, suppressing speech. The hypocrisy involved in these things are just mind-boggling. I mean, that word, if you go on Wikipedia, on Wikipedia right now, as we speak, you're going to see a rap group, they are around in the 80s and the 90s, called NWA. And you know what the acronym stands for? Niggas with Attitude. And they were a popular band at one time. They made a lot of money and all that kind of stuff and things like that. Nobody had a problem. Okay, they finally disbanded or whatever they did. I don't know what happened to them. But the hypocrisy involved in these things, first of all, you want to police speech, which is bad enough. Okay, so certain people could say these words and certain people can't. Okay, so that is just selective prosecution to start with. Okay, so you want to tolerate it by one group of people. This is just creating divisions within our society because you're suppressing the speech on one side and allowing it on the other. Okay, yeah. So this is crazy and insane, and you cannot survive as a society, and you will not survive as a society if you are selective in your prosecution, of the citizens. Is either the speech is banned and then we'll have to get to the First Amendment implications of that. Either it is banned for everyone or it's allowed for everyone. We cannot have these selective bits and pieces. Oh, this group could say it, that group cannot say it, and so on, and this sort of things. People's lives have been destroyed. You're just talking about this woman here. People's lives have been destroyed because of that word. And why? While their lives have been destroyed, there are rappers making millions of dollars using that word all over. Well, there's not over social media. I was going to say all over social media, but certainly all over the music industry. Certainly. And this is the thing that I cannot stand. This selective persecution of people for use of that word. It's unbelievable.
Well, and what's absurd about it too is that this woman only said the word in the story we were showing to discipline a kid who was saying the word.
Exactly.
She has to be able to say the word to say what she's accusing the other person of doing right. She can't say, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, is that what our justice has become to?
But the thing is, Jason, I will bet you, I've never seen a picture of the woman. I'll bet you that woman is white. Okay? I would bet money on that. That woman is white. Okay?
Yeah, almost
but
certainly.
Does the article say?
Well, no. The reason I brought this article up is because think about this too. This woman was fired, and here is Wikipedia, something everybody is encouraged that, hey, this is your kind of first stop in your search for knowledge out there on the internet a lot of times. And, schools don't want this to be your final source, but, everybody understands this might be where you start your first. And here it's completely okay for them to have a complete list of ethnic slurs, right?
Yes.
It's okay for them to have it. And it's okay for you to read it, but it's not okay for you to say it.
Yes. This is unbelievable. And you can even go bring up NWA, and it's right. You're going to see what I'm talking about. But this is the problem. And then when it gets into the problem where we're dealing like in public schools, okay, like in the case of this woman in Iowa, we're dealing with a public school here, okay, and then it becomes a government suppressing speech.
Oh, Leon, somebody better cancel Wikipedia. It's got the N word. Somebody stop them. Somebody stop them. I can't believe they did that. They just offended me to my core.
Call him Mary Poppins lady. Call him Mary Poppins lady. What was he? She was going to have this. She was going to head up this organization, this agency. I forget what it was. Yes, I forget it. But she was singing Mary Poppins, the Mary Poppins song. Do you remember what I'm talking about? No, you probably forgot. Okay.
Mary Poppins. I don't know. There was a bunch of songs. There was Chimney, or no, supercalifragilistic. Oh my God, what does that word mean? I think I know what it means. Right, let's put her in jail.
Yes. Oh, was it this information board? Remember that woman who was going in the Biden administration with the
yeah, and she was singing the supercalifragilistic.
Yes, right. That's what I'm talking about.
Jenkowitz is her name. Jenkowitz. Yeah, we played that on the show several
years
ago.
We did. Yeah.
But she made show tunes to say how she wanted to cancel people for saying for wrong think.
Exactly. So she was going to head up this disinformation board. This is a government, remember, okay? This is the government. She worked in the Biden administration. She's going to have this disinformation thing, and they were going to police speech, especially during COVID. Well, it wasn't going to stop there, but that was their first target. They were going to say what words we could say, what words we can't say, what sentences we can say, what sentences we can't say. And this is the government, the United States government, want to do that in a supposedly free country where we have a First Amendment. This is unbelievable.
Well, and like I said, I mean, this is an example here of just, the fact that this word is in writing, whether it be in like Leon said, in rap songs or in, just a Wikipedia page that's describing it. Or I imagine if we went to the ADL's list, the Anti-Defamation League, they have a list probably too that includes that word. but it's
Of
okay
course.
if they say it. It's just not okay if you say
Yeah.
if you write it. Well, I do think, though, that this is part of the hypocrisy of so many people who are discussing these things, is that most people won't say it. Now, Leon has already said it, but
Yeah.
I'm just going to read a list because I think this is just so. Now, we're not trying to offend anybody. We're just trying to discuss words. And if we can't say the words, we can't even discuss the words, which is a form of policing, I guess. So I am going to start a list of words. And if, like I said, if you have kids listening, then maybe some of these are offensive. I personally don't think most of them are that offensive, but these are all things that could offend somebody. So I'm going to start reading this list. And these are all things that are derogatory, meant to be derogatory terms a lot of times for race, culture, disability, or sex. So this is sort of an exercise, but I'll start off a list, and in no particular order, but so here goes. So cracker, spick, soy boy, tardo, chink, nigger, honky, retard, wetback, kike, cuck, towelhead, faggot, dyke, sand nigger, gimp, slant eye, round eye, dirt, Nazi, queer, Jap, spear chucker, darky, whitey, beaner, greaser, froggy, kraut, half-breed, mongrel, tranny, schizo, cunt, incel, bitch, hiney, jigaboo, junkie, mick, spook, nip, Oreo, nigga, squarehead, raghead, freak, maricone, tranny, shyster, spade, slope, white trash, Karen, wop, Shylock, beta, slut, hag, cocksucker, midget, nag. And this isn't a comprehensive list. This is just a list of a lot of things we've probably all heard in our lives.
Yeah.
And the question is one of those words more offensive than any of the others? Right? I mean, should one of those words carry legal consequence while none of the others should? Which one? I mean,
I know this is so fascinating because one of the words they used there was calling somebody Karen. Now, Karen is somebody's actual name. So you are saying that somebody could be calling out a friend, right? Karen, and all of a sudden somebody's offended because they heard Karen. Come on, I know somebody named Karen. They died a few years ago. I mean, come on.
Was everybody just offended when they read her name at the funeral?
I guess.
But I mean, this is the absurdity of it, right? I mean, words have meaning between the people who are using them. That's not even the same. It's like that okay symbol that we showed earlier. That had a meaning for some people under some context and a meaning for other people under other contexts. And a guy who was literally claimed he was in law enforcement, he said he knows what it means. Right? And that, he does this for a living and that he's willing to bring the weight of government down on somebody because he knows what you mean. Yes. And in all of these cases, it's like that. Does the guy who makes his rap group an offensive name to some people, does that mean he's necessarily offensive to everybody? I this is just nuts. The idea that we have one standard that somehow has to apply to everybody. But I mean, I would challenge somebody to say which word out of that bunch that I said is okay to say and which one isn't okay to say.
Right. Exactly.
So so I guess, Leon, let me give one other example before we kind of get into what should be done, I guess, about these cases. There was another case too where a teacher, I guess, said this in a class and she was fired and then she was reinstated. But I thought one of the more interesting cases is something that just happened in Portland, where a white man was approached by a black man with a knife. It sounded like probably a black homeless guy who had a bunch of charges against him.
They were both homeless, actually. Apparently, they were both homeless, as far as I understand it. Go ahead.
Okay. And so the white guy was apparently standing at some transit stop or something, and the black guy came up to him with a knife unsheathed.
Yeah. Yes.
And then they wound up getting into an altercation, and the white man wound up getting stabbed by the black man. Okay. Yes. And the defense case was that the black man was simply trying to walk up with the knife to trade it for cigarettes.
Imagine that. Imagine that.
But that after the two got into an altercation, probably because, you know, the guy felt like he was threatened, but he used the N-word that we just talked about. And of course, the N-word, as you know, it would be ridiculous not to say it, but he apparently called the guy a nigger. That's what he did. And the issue was that the jury then found that the guy was not guilty after stabbing somebody.
Imagine that. So they're saying, you see, Jason, this story indicates the very danger that we are discussing here. Now, you are telling me now that a man could stab another man, could kill another man, because the man say a word that you find offensive. So really and truly, what you're saying is that in our society, the offense of your nature is the standard by which you can use to quote unquote defend yourself. So if somebody says something to me and I'm offended, or if somebody call me a Democrat when I'm not,
that's pretty damn offensive.
I would be so damn offended. Based upon this jury standard, I have a right to kill that person, or at least try to kill them, because this is what this guy was obviously trying to do. Okay, I would have that right based upon this jury and the ruling of this jury. This is a madness in our society when we allow offense to be the standard, because anything could be offensive. Anything. I could be offended. I could be offended by hearing the words climate change. I could be offended by that because I think it's a bunch of bullshit anyway. But I could be offended by that, or I could be offended by the whole thought of global warming. Oh my goodness gracious! I should go out and kill everybody who use that word.
One person could believe in one God and be offended that another person believes in a different God.
There you go.
You've seen that happen throughout history.
Yes,
that's not okay. It's not okay to go stab somebody because they tell you that they believe in a different metaphysical being in the sky.
Well, you know, truthfully, the history of religion is quite bloody. Okay, it's quite bloody, and a lot of it have to do with the fact that people believe in different gods, whether it's Christians and Muslims, or Muslims and Hindus, or whether it's Christians and somebody else, the Baptists and the whoever was fighting at the beginning of our country. I mean, it's been bloody, and it's just because of their belief in different gods. I mean, right now, you know, like Christians don't believe that the Mormons should be part of the Christian faith and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, it's kind of all this sort of things that is an attempt to suppress people's speech, to suppress their beliefs, is what happens here. But the thing that we have to be careful about, and I think it's already, I don't know if I can say it have reached the breaking point, but the thing that we have to be careful about is making offense the standard, because anything could be offensive, and we can never have a truly functioning society if everything could be offensive. We could never have a good society and a productive society, a functioning society, if everything could be offensive.
Before we wrap this topic up, I did want to show one more video, because this really shows the absurdity that's happening outside of our country right now. And it's a conversation between two journalists about what word they can say and what word a person can say without getting thrown in jail in England. But these are two journalists that most people will recognize. It's Tucker Carlson and Piers Morgan. So let's watch a little bit of this.
Would you say the word faggot on camera?
No.
Why?
Because
you don't want to get arrested, do you?
Doesn't want to be arrested.
Because it's so harmful to people?
No,
is it like gay bashing? What's wrong with that?
No, actually, my whole issue with the whole trans debate, for example, is you don't need to slide into actually saying derogatory stuff about trans people to make the point that women's rights should be protected. You don't need to.
Well, I agree.
So what? I don't believe.
No, but it's a magic word.
I don't believe in needlessly sneering.
Well, I'm not smearing anybody. I just think.
But why would you use that word?
Faggot?
Yeah.
I just did.
But would you
faggot?
Okay, but why?
And I'm using it because you're not allowed to. Because you're
allowed to.
Go ahead.
I don't want to.
Say
So what is causing Tucker Carlson and Piers Morgan to have so much consternation over this F word? Well, it has to do with a woman who was in the UK and she had been assaulted by somebody. And when she sent a text to sort of a frenemy of hers that was sort of knew about the assault, I guess, to some degree, but it's a little bit complicated. But when she sent the message describing what had happened to her and the beating she took, she called the person a faggot, or the F word that they are talking about. And when that frenemy then sent the text on to the police, and believe it or not, this woman was persecuted for describing her assaulter with a slur, this F word. Let's hear a little bit more from Piers Morgan interviewing the woman in question.
How
did you feel when the police contacted you?
Well, I was shocked. I didn't expect that. I mean,
because these are private text messages.
Throughout my life, I've had messages with my friends and we've fallen out and we've said things that aren't very nice to each other, but you would never really expect that to go any further than that.
I've heard 11 police officers turned up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's completely ridiculous.
Yeah, I'd left my front door open. I was waiting for my dad to come to the house. I was actually in the bath.
And 11
they opened the door themselves.
And just came in?
And came in.
And you were in the bath?
Yeah. And then they just come up the stairs and they didn't give me any privacy or anything.
You were naked?
Yes.
How did that make you feel?
Disgusted. I'm really upset. I was crying my eyes out.
And what
11 police officers sent to somebody's house to arrest them while they're taking a bath, while they're naked, for a word, for a naughty name. This is nuts.
Was in the course of these text messages, you use the F word. We've already said what that word is. He repeated it many times. I choose not to say it. You can do what you like. In the end, you pleaded guilty. First of all, why did you plead guilty?
My solicitor told me to.
Right.
And I've never been into trouble before, and I was really concerned about.
You had no criminal record?
No.
Because the malicious communications offences, which is under which you were prosecuted, such as sending grossly offensive messages, can receive a hate crime sentence uplift if motivated by hostility towards a protected characteristic like race, religion, sexual orientation, or disability. So you got an uplifted sentence.
So there you have it. I mean, it's just absolutely nuts. Somebody says something, that's a more serious crime than somebody actually assaulting somebody, which is just what we saw in this other case in Portland.
Sure.
So that was why it was definitely important to talk about this. But, this does bring up the issue. What is then the proper solution in a free society when you hear things that are offensive to you? What should you do? Right.
Well,
I'll let you go first.
If you want to go, it's okay. It's okay. If you want to go, it's okay.
Well, but, no, you go. You sound like you're ready.
The answer, Jason, is simple. Implementation might be more difficult because we are so far down this road where offense is now becoming the standard. That my personal offense is the standard to shut people up. Okay, so if somebody called me a Democrat, I'm surely offended by that, but I should be able to shut that person up for saying something that is a common word in our society. The answer to all of this is free speech must be absolute. Now that does not mean we cannot persecute people for the consequences of speech. Like, for instance, I gave the example of shouting fire in a crowded theater. There's no fire. Somebody got trampled and died. Then the person will not be persecuted for their speech, but persecuted for their actions. So the whole thing about this is that we have to get back to that standard where free speech is absolute, but people can be persecuted for consequences of speech, like inciting violence. You could be prosecuted not for the speech itself, but for the violence that resulted from your speech. Like me telling someone, man, you should go kill that son of a SOB. You should go kill them. You should go blah, blah, blah. You should go do that. Okay. That my speech is okay. It should be okay. But if that person acted on my speech, then yeah, sure. The actions, I could be part of a conspiracy, then they could claim, and then they could probably prosecute me for inciting violence or inciting a
and
crime.
to be clear, too, when you mentioned too the harm that may result, the issue is not that somebody may go nuts for some unrelated reason. The issue is that if you are trying to encourage somebody to do harm on your behalf, I mean, that's what we're really talking about here. If you tell somebody, hey, that person's a terrible person, we should go kill them. Right? That is what we're talking about here. We're not talking about, I said a crazy word. I said the word Democrat, and Leon just went nuts and started killing people. I mean, I'm not trying. There's no rational way anybody could say that I'm trying to guide Leon to hurt people. It's just that Leon had a completely irrational reaction to
be careful, you're associating me. You better be careful. You're associating me with the word Democrat. I might get triggered, Jason. I might get triggered here.
Yeah. But I just want to make that clear. I mean, if it's somebody is guiding somebody, and in the case of like fire in a crowded theater, there is an element of fraud in that sense. If nobody is going to say there's a problem if you actually saw a fire in the crowded theater and you're letting everybody know. But if you're screaming fire in the attempt to cause people to harm themselves because they are trying to respond to a false allegation of fire, that is where the real harm is there. So there's an issue of fraud. And of course, in contract law, you don't have the right to just lie to people in a contract.
Exactly.
Now, this is a little bit looser than a contract, but we have to have at least some expectation. If somebody says, hey, look out, in an attempt to get you to jump into a dangerous situation, and there's nothing to look out for. That's something where maybe you take on some liability at that point for your speech.
Indeed.
I think that's probably that gray line that maybe, but the issue I wanted to get to though was just it's freedom of association. People talk about cancellation as something that is a negative, but you know what? If a group of people, having nothing to do with government, if they want to form a group together that believes a certain thing or is offended by a certain thing, they shouldn't have to be forced to include somebody who offends them. Right?
Exactly.
I mean, freedom of association solves this problem if we're responsible enough to just do that. And that's the point, right? I mean, so if I were to run down the street yelling the N-word all over the place, people shouldn't have to just say, oh yeah, we got to include Jason. We got to bring him into dinner because, we can't discriminate against him. No, you should absolutely be able to discriminate against somebody who's obnoxious.
Yeah. Or if the Democrats have a little association here in El Group, they should be forced to take Leon. All right, there should be.
And I mean, we see this, if it's a group of Democrats, they may not want a Republican showing up, right? I mean,
exactly.
They should have the freedom not to have to do that unless you're government. If you're government, then you can't really put those lines out because we all are forced to pay into government. But if we keep things as private as possible, so we have government as small as possible, then freedom of association and freedom of speech solve most of our problems, if we can just, embrace those things. But sadly, we constantly want to force everybody into our own ideas about what they can say and who they have to be around. So, and there's a cost, by the way, to irrational bias. If we've talked about Jackie Robinson before, but I mean, there were people who didn't want a black baseball player on their team. they paid for that because the team that took Jackie Robinson beat the crap out of them.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then
exactly.
pretty soon, all those other teams, they changed on their own without government forcing them to, because they said,
And this was before the civil rights movement. This was
Exactly.
before the civil rights movement. Yes.
Yep. So, so anyways, it's just something to, there are solutions here. But anyways, let's jump to freedom of thought, because that's the ultimate here. That's where we're going. And this literally happened in Europe, and it's not quite this bad here yet. Although, sometimes it feels that way online. But this literally happened in Europe, where a person was arrested for silently praying in public. Let's watch this video.
A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own.
Arrested for silently praying. Sounds just nuts. Let's see a little more about Adam Smith Connor's story and see who he is.
When Adam Smith Connor was approached by police officers, they asked, "What is the nature of your prayer today?"
What is the nature of that? I'm praying for my son.
Making the charge against him what many are calling a thought crime.
They asked me to leave the area. I declined because I don't think that prayer can ever be considered a criminal act or illegal. I was out of line of sight from the clinic behind a tree, and I didn't look at anyone, I didn't approach anyone, I didn't speak to anyone.
So what exactly is this thought crime law that is being enforced in the UK?
United Kingdom's new buffer zone law makes it illegal for anyone to do anything that intentionally or recklessly influences someone's decision to use abortion services. The law will apply within a 150-meter radius of the abortion service provider.
Lest you think this is a one-off, here's another case.
63-year-old retired medical scientist from Bournemouth, England, was also put on trial for standing near an abortion clinic and holding up a sign reading, "Here to talk if you want," and talking to women who approached her.
So what are you up to today, sorry?
I'm praying.
You're praying?
Yes.
Okay.
In Scotland, this letter sent to citizens warns that anyone living within an abortion clinic buffer zone could violate the law while inside their own homes. Some think it could include praying near a window if a woman seeking an abortion walks by.
Jesus Lord. Good Lord. Good Lord.
Yeah, and here is just this is the guy, we just saw him, but yeah, just and what killed me is he said he wasn't even in line of sight. I mean, I could get it maybe if somebody said they were praying, but they were obstructing somebody's path to be able to walk through a door, but that's different. It's the obstructing of somebody's path through the door. It's not the praying, right? And I mean, exactly. This is just nuts, right? Here a person was across the street, not in line of sight, and he's praying because his own son, was lost to an abortion, right? Yeah. And that's what he was praying about. And that you're not allowed to have those thoughts in Europe.
The sad thing about all of this is that Europe is the cradle of Western civilization, and one of the biggest tenets that came out of that cradle was that thing that we call free speech, and that not only free speech but freedom of thought and freedom of association, but certainly freedom of thought. And now we're seeing so many of these European countries where the United Kingdom is almost lost. So many of these countries taking massive steps back, where speech is being suppressed in every corner, and it's on every corner of Europe you could think about. In the case that we're talking about with this woman who sent out a text message to somebody who was supposed to be a friend. The friend took it into the police, then 11 police officers. Imagine that. They don't have no other crimes to take care of. They're going to arrest a woman. They enter the woman's home I don't know, I guess they had a search warrant of some kind, I don't know. Enter the woman's home. 11 police officers to arrest this one woman because she used the word faggot in a text message to a friend, a supposed friend. these countries, some of them are truly lost. Okay, Great Britain lost. France is heading the same way. Sweden is heading the same way. All of these countries are now finding creative ways to suppress speech and prosecuting people who even think about certain things. Okay,
Well,
like in this.
Leon, one of the things I wanted to mention too about something you just said about the woman in the UK, and it's because she said an F word. I would have never known if somebody she said the F word. I wouldn't have known what that meant, right? I would have thought there's a whole bunch of other swear words I would have assumed she was using. And the fact that the word was faggot that she was saying, it's like, to me, it wouldn't have even occurred. And that's kind of the problem, right? Is that somehow with all of this stuff, we're saying, you know what that person did, you know what that person, they used the F word, they used the N word.
Yeah.
That's insanity. We don't even necessarily know what they meant. And it's the same thing with the sign.
Yes.
You know what that meant. I mean, this is nuts, right? The idea of the words we can't. Anyway, sorry, Leon. I just wanted to, but it just occurred to me that F word, and it's like, wow, you know what?
Yes. It's just plain insane what is happening in some of these countries. The so-called cradle of Western civilization. This is unbelievable. I never thought I would have lived long enough to see this happen in 2025. I never thought I would have lived this long. I'll be 70 years next year, and I am, God willing, of course. And I'm seeing some of the most remarkable reversals of liberties occurring in what used to be the cradle of Western civilization.
It's just absolutely, they would make our founding fathers but cry to know what we're coming to. Absolutely nuts. But you know, we did get a comment too from one of the viewers, and they said, "Happy holidays, Knuckleheads," from Florida, from Bernadine M. Montague.
Bernadine M. Montague. She's my sister.
Oh, okay. Happy holidays to you too, Bernadine. Okay. Well, let's see. Let's get on to the last topic, which is, because we're way over time, but this is our Knucklehead Noise Patrol. And again, we're talking about what somebody said here. So, and again, it's our president. We've got full circle. And it has to do with, you know, a sad case. You know, somebody was murdered, a famous actor. Let's watch the video and we find out a little more about the story.
Well, legendary Hollywood actor Rob Reiner and his wife were found dead inside the couple's California home in an apparent homicide. Citing multiple sources, people reported that Rob, 78, and Michelle, 68, were killed by their son, Nick.
So terrible tragedy for Rob Reiner's family and friends and his many fans around the world. He is an iconic actor and director, having directed movies such as Stand By Me and starring in TV shows that everybody remembers that are like a landmark, like All in the Family. So Rob Reiner also, though, was a very political person and really did not like Trump. And those who knew him probably thought he had a little bit of Trump derangement syndrome, or TDS. However, that had nothing to do with his death. And yet that didn't stop our president from commenting on Rob Reiner's death. Let's hear a little bit about that.
President Trump is responding to Rob Reiner's death with what appears to be a political attack against the late director. Posting on Truth Social, Trump suggests Reiner's death was due to, quote, the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding, and incurable affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome. Reiner was a vocal critic of the president, Kentucky Republican Thomas Massie, calling his comments, quote, inappropriate and disrespectful.
And when confronted with this behavior in the White House by the press, Trump doubled down.
Mr. President, a number of Republicans have denounced your statement on Truth Social after the murder of Rob Reiner. Do you stand by that post?
Well, I wasn't a fan of his at all. He was a deranged person as far as Trump is concerned.
I don't know if you caught that, but he said he was a deranged person as far as Trump is concerned, literally referring to himself in the third person there.
He said He knew it was false. In fact, it's the exact opposite, that I was a friend of Russia, controlled by Russia. You know, it was the Russia hoax. He was one of the people behind it. I think he hurt himself in career-wise. He became like a deranged person, Trump derangement syndrome. So I was not a fan of Rob Reiner at all, in any way, shape, or form. I thought he was very bad for our country.
So did Rob Reiner have Trump derangement syndrome? Well, probably yes. He was pretty crazed in his dislike of Trump. That said, it almost feels like maybe Trump has a little bit of derangement of his own to make Rob Reiner's horrific death, to make himself the center of attention in that, which is just kind of nuts. But maybe to hear the proper way to have dealt with this, other than maybe to just say nothing about it, let's hear what Rob Reiner had to say when he was asked about the death of Charlie Kirk recently, who would have definitely been on the opposite side of the political spectrum from Rob Reiner.
First heard about the murder of Charlie Kirk. What was your immediate gut reaction to it?
Well, horror, absolute horror. And I unfortunately saw the video of it, and it's beyond belief what happened to him, and that should never happen to anybody. I don't care what your political beliefs are. That's not acceptable.
And so there you go. And let's see. And yeah, this is the article we're talking about here. So and it's kind of interesting because it does feel like a lot of Republicans, at least, you know, rank and file people are kind of expressing that they're a little bit appalled by what he said, even if not all the politicians are necessarily, you know, some of them are kind of, you know, gutless and won't rebuke him for this. I know Thomas Massey and MTG, they both came out and said this is not appropriate, but yeah. Anyways, yeah, what are your thoughts, Leon?
You know, Trump does really know how to rub us the wrong way, and us being people who supports him and voted for him. You know, he's the president of the United States, and you would think there's a time to be gracious, okay? And I cannot think of a more appropriate time than this one to be gracious. A man lost his life. The man's wife also lost her life. And to make this situation even more tragic, their son is responsible for their deaths, allegedly. This is the time for the leader of nations to say something more gracious, something more merciful, something more heartfelt than to litigate your political differences. Okay, I didn't think much of Rob Reiner. I didn't think much of him. However, he didn't deserve to die this way. And he didn't deserve the tragedy of his death. That is, he died at the hands of his son, as did his wife. And I think Trump really blew it on this particular case, to show how gracious a man he could be. This was a total fail on his part.
Yeah, pretty much. And you know, the solution as well is for people to, you know, rebuke him personally. You know, you don't have to, you know, government doesn't have to be involved. I mean, we can just say, hey, this was obnoxious. And, you know, if you had somebody like that, maybe you'd say, you know, maybe we don't want to be around you for a little while. I don't know. You know, but he is the government at the moment. So that's a little bit difficult.
True. Yes.
But yeah, so anyways, yeah, but it's something where I think it's important that I think, you know, we should all demand more of our political leaders, I guess.
Yes.
You know, those who would put themselves in power to speak in our name. And that's part of the problem, right? Is that, you know, we've seen the standards of the Democrats, which are willing to put practically a comatose person in office. But, you know, Republicans are also, you know, I mean, you got to step up and say, hey, you know, if our guy is doing something wrong too, we got to think at least. And we can still say, hey, our guy we still may say is better than the other guy, but we at least got to acknowledge that.
Acknowledge that this was a total fail. This was a total fail. You got to acknowledge that. Yes.
Yeah. So otherwise we don't change. But I did have this thought I wanted to leave everybody with, since we spent so much time talking about speech and it's sort of those words that you can't say. And this is a little clip from a movie called Full Metal Jacket, and it's a sergeant addressing his new troops, and it really tells you maybe in some ways what the government thinks of all us, but it also too there's a certain amount of equality to it as well. So let me play this little clip here. It's a clip from a much longer clip, but where a sergeant is addressing his new recruits.
I am hard, but I am fair. There is no racial bigotry here. I do not look down on niggers, tykes, wops, or greasers. Here you are all equally worthless.
I think that's the real thing, right? The government really sees us all.
Yes.
Just it's pawns, right? It doesn't really matter what color we are. But there is a certain amount of quality to that. If we could just get government to do that again, right now, the government is actually telling us it sees us all a little bit differently. That's where the real problem is.
Very true. Very true.
So, anyways, yeah, I can't think of anything else, Leon. You got any final thoughts for the audience before we leave?
I hope and pray offense will never become the standard by which we'll use to suppress speech, because anything in our society can become offensive to someone, and then if we have no speech, then we cannot have a productive society. If we do not have free speech, we cannot have a productive society. If we cannot engage and equally and freely interact with each other, we cannot have a functioning society. Then we'll have a failed society and all our liberties will be gone.
Hear, hear. Well, if you're watching us before the next show, think about what you can do in your community. We're getting near the end of the year, so, start thinking about what you can do next year to help progress liberty in your community, because there's always people out there trying to erode it. Until next time, stay tuned and stay free.
Oh, yes, indeed. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.